unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hi, and welcome, and happy Monday. Here's what you're going to learn on tonight's show. Ever long to remember your childhood more clearly? In about 10 minutes' time, we'll look at mind-bending research that suggests seeing a younger, computer-generated version of yourself could unlock your hidden memories. With such technology, what could you rediscover about your past? After that, you'll learn what's actually choosing your next dinner. I'm talking restaurants. Gone are the days you'll look at a newspaper and get a review. Now people scroll, they save, they send links to a group chat. Coming up halfway through the hour, the restaurant review is dying. The TikTok restaurant review is what people are using these days. All right, on tonight's show, that's some of what we'll cover. There will be more, but now let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And any major media outlet, when they get the facts wrong, they have to issue a retraction. So this show, The Last Show, we have to issue a retraction over something we did last week with our foreign correspondent, Tony Five. We covered a stolen candy heist. Well, not really a heist, but a woman who deducted stolen candy from a tenant that moved out of her apartment in the security deposit. She withheld security deposit from a guy over stealing her chocolate. He went to a tribunal, a civil resolution tribunal, and they awarded the woman the money for the chocolate. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, I'm here, a very sullen Tony. I find it very difficult to apologise for things, especially when it's not my fault. But I do take full and comprehensive responsibility, David. We are here to provide a source of information for the people that listen to us, sadly. It's more like, I would say, tomato sauce or maybe Caesar sauce than actual sauce itself. But yes, David, we got it wrong.
We got it wrong. We said that this man stole $100 plus of chocolate while he was living in a woman's apartment, and then the tribunal awarded the woman $100, to which our producer said, "It's probably my fault for thinking that even one of you two would take 2 minutes to read the actual news story before presenting it on a national radio show." Here's the actual facts. The tribunal awarded the woman $6.50 worth of chocolate, which is actually more funny because it's such a petty amount.
Yes. We did try to work out how many chocolate bars would entail hundreds of dollars worth of repayment, whereas actually it was only $6. And to be fair, she only had the evidence of about $6 worth of chocolate, which was fair.
Well, we will read the stories that we present a little better as we present them. So we want to do an apology to all of our listenership, a retraction. We got the number wrong. The BC Civil Resolution Tribunal awarded a woman $6.50 to withhold from a security deposit over a tenant that stole chocolate, not over $100. Boom. Apologies out there. We are back to being the consummate professionals. Now let's go to Florida with a story that you and I actually read. Tony, right now there's like a cold cell covering a lot of North America. I'm not hit here in New York, but my parents in Toronto are freezing. It's like below zero. There's snow.
I have heard that, David. Yeah, there's been some wild weather recently, but I get an alert every now and again with the places that I go and I see. So Toronto came up, even New York came up with a cold snap. I don't think it was necessarily freezing cold, but just a change in weather. And yeah, you guys are really cold, right?
No, we're going to get it like tonight or tomorrow. We haven't gotten it yet. But I want to talk about Florida, which is about to get it, because they are warning residents to be careful as they walk down the sidewalks.
Oh, slipping over.
No, close though. There are a lot of people who retire in Florida who could slip and break their heads.
Icicles.
Not icicles.
Snowmen.
No, not snowmen, Tony. It's even better. It's beyond your wildest dreams. But I know you know what it actually is because today we read the article in entirety so our producer wouldn't get mad at us. If you're in Florida during the cold spell and you're walking on the sidewalk under a tree, you need to take great caution.
Yes.
Because an iguana could fall off of the tree and hit you in the head.
A what?
An iguana, Tony. An iguana.
That's like a baby dinosaur, isn't it? Those are quite heavy.
And here, I read the article. Iguanas, when it gets cold, they sort of freeze up and they get stunned. And if they're gripping a tree, they'll lose their grip and they can fall and hit you on the head. And people have died and people have been injured in the past. And yes, I have cited sources for that claim. And by people, I mean I can only find one person who ever died. But still, it is something that weather officials in Florida are warning the general public. And that is exactly the kind of news we need to report on this show.
I guess if it's happened to one person, then yes, it can happen to many, and you do have to report it. And I do like the fact that you researched that comprehensively to make sure that we were presenting factual information. I like that.
I don't want to get the numbers wrong and say it happens to 9 out of 10 people on Floridian streets every day, which is what I would assume would be who'd have thought, like, of all the ways to die, like of all the ways to die. Imagine you get in a bar fight in a bathroom and your head hits the urinal and you get knocked out and you die. That's a pretty bad way to die. To announce that at a funeral is awkward for the family. I actually know someone who died that way. Well, someone's grandparent. But still, to die from an iguana, like what would you even say at the funeral, Tony?
The funeral, I would be like, because people are kind of mournful and they're sad. Would you have, like, if other people had to ask the other mourners, like, oh my God, how did Uncle Fred die? Well, an iguana fell on his head. It's just a really bad, it sounds like a very Buster Keaton-esque, Three Stooges-esque way to die.
He died as he lived, dropping iguanas on his head. No, I guess you wouldn't say that.
Iguanas on his head. It's always what he wanted. That's the way he wanted to go.
All right. Well, I guess, Tony, if you're in Florida, wear a hard hat, I guess is our official advice from the medical experts at this show.
I guess if there's anybody in Florida, this is a public warning for all Floridians that might listen to the last show. Please wear a hard hat, look up, don't look down, keep going.
My parents are actually going to Florida soon. They spent a couple months of the winter there. I should warn them. I should have my mom wear a hard hat.
I think you should sponsor hard hats, David, for the people of Florida. Danger. Iguanas falling, and any other sort of sticky insects type thing on trees.
It could be a good business idea for you. Iguana hard hats by Tony 5. You could make trillions. Tony, let's go to our last story here. A recent report of Gen Xers, so that's you, I'm unfortunately a millennial, and baby boomers.
That's me, I'm a Gen Xer. I have no idea what that means, but I am a Gen Xer, correct?
I think it just means when you were born, Tony, because you're a little older than me. Gen Xers and baby boomers, if they do the deed with their romantic partners in the morning, get a little frisky.
Yes.
They end up being better workers and more productive. Their productivity is boosted based on a morning romance session for the rest of the day, according to a new study. Tony, what do you make of this as our resident, before work romance expert?
Well, technically I'm unemployed. So what does that mean for me?
It means you'll do your job with more productivity.
Or less productivity because I'm not doing anything with anybody.
Well, you'd be doing something if you practice this practice. And that's according to a research paper that we read about that surveyed 1,000 full-time workers. So I guess you'd be excluded being unemployed.
Yep.
Their productivity levels are 71% up. Their task completion, 70% up. Their focus, 58%. And their motivation for their job, up 57%. If they do the romantic thing in the morning before work.
Now tell me, how does that research help anybody, David? Anybody at all in the world? How does it help? Who on earth is sitting there? Do like the big major companies, Deloitte, Apple, Google, do they read these and think, well, we're going to encourage our employees to do this?
I mean, I don't know whether they should, but considering it's Gen X and baby boomers, this is not like I guess younger Gen Xs are still kind of in the child having age of lower 40s, but still, or mid 40s, but still, baby boomers aren't typically having babies. So it's not to help with the birth rate. I don't know who it is to help. All I know is that some researchers probably, and this is not a cited fact, this is me guessing, so you can't get mad at me, producer. Some researchers probably got paid or funded to do this research.
Unbelievable. I don't know where that money's coming from. They should use it to spend on sort of different sorts of research on again, baby iguanas falling out of trees.
Absolutely. Tony, only the most important, only the most cited research articles that we have fully read on the show. I appreciate you being here.
David, facts, not fiction, my friend. Facts, not fiction.
That was Tony 5. Coming up next, how a simple computer simulation of you looking into your own eyes, but with the face of a younger you, could spark vivid early memories, ones that could unlock childhood memories, ones you had trouble remembering in vivid detail. It's super cool, and we'll teach you about it in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
All right, one of the most fascinating pieces of research that I've heard about in a while. It turns out that simply seeing a younger version of your own face, like using a computer with video to overlay your young face over your current face, seeing a younger version of yourself can actually help unlock childhood memories in vivid emotional detail. I'm here with someone who worked on this study. He's a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of North Dakota. His name is Utkarsh Gupta. Utkarsh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How did you think of this core idea of taking a younger video of me, overlaying it so I'm staring at my younger self in the video camera or on the screen, and then trying to study it? It just seems like such a novel thing. How did you come up with this?
Yeah, actually, it was a very intense brainstorming discussion with my PhD mentor, Professor Jane Aspel, at the time. I think it was 2019 October when we started having a conversation about this, and I was a lot more interested in technology, so I was researching using electroencephalography and other tools and techniques. But around that time, we wanted to work on something that integrated my research interests, as well as her research interests. And I was working quite a lot with memory. And then there were a few recent papers in which episodic memory was being investigated with alteration and how your body representation manifests in your brain. So if you use certain virtual reality based manipulations of your body representation in the brain, it was seen that you can actually alter how a memory is encoded in the laboratory and then recollect it after a short period of time. So it was a laboratory-based setting that researchers were experimenting on.
To summarize that kind of in lay terms, if I see an illusion of what I look like and it's different than, me now, it can kind of trick my brain into thinking that that is me?
So contrary to what we may think, that we have a very sturdy representation of our body in our brain, it's not the case because it's fairly malleable. And that is what we try and achieve via these body illusions. And what we did with the enfacement illusion, with the enfacement of a younger version of self, was another kind of illusion, which is termed as enfacement illusion. And researchers were doing enfacement illusion in laboratory as well as full body illusion, in which the entire body was having an altered representation in virtual reality or other setting. Then that alters the representation, and that kind of like indicates how malleable our representation is. I don't know if you've heard about a very well-known experiment, the rubber hand illusion, in which a fake hand is struck with a thread, and then even though like it's a fake hand, the participant responds to the threat response with their actual hand. So there is a sense of ownership for the fake hand. Similarly, here in the illusion, we create a sense of ownership for the morphed face or a fake body and full body illusion experiments as such. And that indicates how malleable our body representation in our brain is.
Wow. Okay. So if I have a fake arm coming out of my sleeve, I know it's not mine, but then someone hits it with a knife, I'll have a sort of a, protective response. Similarly, if I overlay a video of a younger version of me, I'll start to feel like that younger version.
So there is certain additional protocols to it. So I know we talked a little bit in the pre-interview about like what kind of sensory information is dominant for quite a lot of people. For me, it's visual. For you, it was not.
Yeah, sound.
When we do these illusory experiments, we play with multisensory and sensory motor integration. So what we do is we combine alteration or create congruent or incongruent conditions using multiple sensory information. So in my experiment, we used visual-motor synchrony or asynchrony. That means like if I'm looking at the screen and if I move my head to the left, then I would see my head move to the left in the screen. But in asynchrony, it would be opposite. And then it creates this uncanny experience that, hey, that might not be my face. So it creates strong versus weak illusion. Now, there are quite a lot of experiments that uses tactile stimulation with visual stimulation. So two sensory information, visual and tactile together, and creates synchrony and asynchrony. By what I mean to say is you could see your body in the virtual reality being touched on your hand, but in the actual experience, you would feel it on your leg. So what you're seeing is not what you're feeling. So that's asynchronous. So that's a weak illusion condition. Whereas if you see and feel the touch on your actual body at the same time, in the same place, in the same motion or frequency as well, then that creates a stronger illusion. So you have a stronger illusion of ownership or embodiment of that fake or virtual body per se.
Let's get on track here. When you showed participants younger versions of themselves, what sort of memories did that unlock? What sort of experiences, emotional and otherwise, did they have?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in our experiment, we used what is called the autobiographical memory interview task. Now that is very specific, where we ask certain semantic questions, by which I mean factual information from the past. Whereas episodic information, so episodic autobiographical memory, is an event that the person experienced in the past that relates to themselves, contributing to their personal identity, hence autobiographical memory. And then in the task, we have specific scoring patterns or conditions where you score on a 4-point scale from 0 to 3, depending on how fine-grained your vividness, time and place recollection, thoughts and emotions, and time integration in general, or sensory perceptions as well from that memory is being recollected. So while our task was quite controlled in the experiment, and we're looking at that, but after the task, we also talked about like an open-ended question, how did you feel? And that was when a lot of other magic happened, which we did not report in the experiment, but I think it relates to your question, is that...
Yes, tell me about it.
In those open-ended questions, they literally felt and they themselves said that I know for sure that I have talked about this memory a lot of times with my folks back at home during a barbecue party or like a garden party. But after facing myself, or like we also did a full body illusion as well, or like after the full body illusion, they were able to recollect far more episodic details of that memory compared to when they would be having that recollection with their folks at home, and like the same intensity, enthusiasm, but the details were more. So they themselves could appreciate that they were able to recollect more. And we have the data while with the task, but the open-ended questions also indicated quite a lot of evidence that this enfacement or this multi-sensory strong illusion of owning a younger version of oneself, whether it's a face or full body, actually helped them recollect better childhood memories from around the time when they would have similar featured body aspects or face aspects.
Anecdotally, if I look at old photos of me at school, and if I just try to remember like what a concert that I was in a band in high school, what a concert was like, I couldn't tell you much about it. But if I look at a photo of me on stage with my band, I'll get like a more powerful memory. I imagine this is even more powerful than that, but it's sort of that nostalgic feeling you get when you look at an old photograph and you look yourself in the eye, but this would be a much more powerful version.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's called priming, or like you present a cue. It can be visual, auditory, tactile, gustatory, whatever like similar cue that was being encoded at the time when the event or that memory was being encoded, then it is quite possible that it will recollect. But what we are trying to do is integrating multiple sensory and creating a stronger embodiment or enfacement of that particular bodily features, which we argue is being encoded implicitly. That is what I mean to say by implicit, is that it is being encoded without your conscious effort of encoding the body features. Because, for example, right now when we're having this conversation, I'm looking at my hand movements, I'm looking at myself on the screen as well. Now, 10 years from now, with the similar features, probably I'll be recollecting far more details of this conversation than without like this. So like what I'm trying to say is that these bodily information is being encoded right now without me consciously thinking that I'm encoding this information. And this is what we are triggering from the past.
It's really interesting.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for I mean, it's complicated, but it's interesting and it's really cool. And I see a future where there's a product or an app where I can stare at a younger self on my phone to try to remember things not too far away. It sounds like a really good like app idea. Utkarsh, thank you for joining me and sharing your research with the show.
No, cheers. Thanks.
Utkarsh Gupta is a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of North Dakota. Up next, if you want to go to a great restaurant these days, the reviews in general aren't found in print. They're found on video sharing websites like TikTok. Details up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Picking where to eat tonight, fancy a restaurant, where should you go? Well, for recommendations, we used to trust food critics, Yelp, even a Michelin guide, maybe a celebrity. But now dinner for many starts on TikTok. The restaurant review is out, the algorithm seems to be in. So let's talk about how folks choose where to eat nowadays. Here with someone who recently wrote about it in Business Insider, where she is a reporter. Her name is Erin McDowell. Erin, what a great pleasure it is you coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
This shift between traditional restaurant reviews, however we found restaurants before short-form video sharing platforms to now, how did you observe it? Why did you notice it? And what made you want to write about it?
Yeah, so this is something that I've experienced in my day-to-day life. Like, obviously, being a reporter with a focus on food, I'm constantly looking for, like, what is the next buzzy restaurant, especially with a focus here in New York. And I found that while I, of course, am maybe like clued into places like the New York Times or The Infatuation, due to my job, I find that most of the recommendations for restaurants that I get are from people sending them to me in group chats on Instagram, on TikTok. And I've found also that that's like a great search engine. And that's what I wanted to really delve into. And I was like, is this something that only I've experienced, or is this something that leaders in the industry are also seeing? And I found that it was.
I remember the first time, it was maybe a year and a half ago, I was with a friend and he was like, oh, we don't want to go there. It's going to be too busy. It's a, quote, TikTok restaurant. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Fast forward a year and a half, I know exactly what he means. It means that people are talking about it on these short form video sharing platforms, but they aren't necessarily getting like the traditional press that they would have used to have gotten to be a buzzy restaurant. Is that understanding correct? If you were to define a, quote, TikTok restaurant?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that a TikTok restaurant, even though like some people might be put off by that, it just means that it's a restaurant that not only people are talking about on social media, I would say, but it's also a restaurant that is really leaning into that and sees TikTok and Instagram as a great way to put their business out there. They're very clued into like what are the biggest menu innovations happening, what's trending in the city. And I think they're really leaning into that. And so maybe being a TikTok restaurant is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's something that a lot of restaurants at this point strive to be.
To be clear, my friend was saying you don't want to go there because it'll be too busy based on that. Not that it'll be bad food. And it's just that. Like these reviews, quote unquote, these videos about restaurants can really make or break them nowadays. And I think a lot of older folks aren't realizing that. Would you say that is correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say as much as for the diner, a restaurant being too busy, that can detract from our experience for sure. But also, especially among Gen Z and the Zillennial crowd, people are being way more selective now about where they go out to eat, what money they want to spend. And so I think restaurants would happily be too busy rather than have no one coming in the door, which is what a lot of restaurants are experiencing right now. There's definitely been a decline in foot traffic. So I think if social media is a way to leverage your influence, then I think restaurants are all about that.
In my late 20s, I had a lot of friends that were much older than me, and I remember them looking at me like, what, are you out of your mind? When I said, yeah, I'm happy to stand at the front of a busy restaurant for 90 minutes waiting for a table. Now I'm that old person who says, I will not do that. What does a For You page review, that is a review of a restaurant on TikTok, do for a restaurant and say about a restaurant that a traditional review just can't, like a New York Times review or some major food publication?
Yeah, absolutely. I say that the biggest thing is that it's all visual for the most part. You're seeing these high contrast, flashed photo type video reels of the food. So that's the first thing is like, whereas a traditional review would have had maybe photos, but mostly text. That was kind of the outlay of what a traditional review was. Now, these videos are maybe 30 seconds long, and it's just super high paced, very visual. You're hearing the reporter or the influencer talk over it via voiceover. It just feels a lot more casual. And I think that that's something that Gen Z and Zillennials are really attracted to. They don't have the time in their busy lives to sit down for 5 minutes even and read a 2,000-word review on a restaurant when they can watch a reel or a TikTok in 30 seconds and then scroll to the next.
How much about these reviews are often about vibe or aesthetic or how you're going to feel in the restaurant, what the lighting is going to be like, how you're going to be seated versus the food itself?
I think both are equally important. I don't think that as much as Gen Z does love a vibe and love aesthetics, and that is something that is important to them, I think the food still is the most important part of it. One member of Gen Z that I spoke to said that, the visuals and, how the restaurant is presented, do they have good lighting? Those things are really important to Gen Z when they're trying to figure out where to go for a date night or a big hangout with friends. You might be looking for a different vibe for each of those occasions. But she said that the biggest thing she looks at is it the type of food that I want to eat? What's the price point? Things like that.
Now, who's creating these videos that so many people watch? Is it like really high profile influencers or people with not that big a following? People that would be sort of like a friend of yours, a regular individual?
I would say it's everyone, from micro creators with like 10,000 followers to some of the biggest influencers in New York City, especially. So I spoke to the VIP list, which is one of the, biggest up and coming food influencer creator accounts in the city. And they are on track to like have almost as much engagement sometimes as some of these like bigger name publications, which I found really interesting. And a lot of that too is like the influencers are in many cases seem more relatable to a younger audience. Whereas, people who've been working in food media or older generations, they might know a name like Pete Wells, but your average 22-year-old, maybe not. So I think that is really leveling the playing field for who we look to get these recommendations.
Is the food critic for I know it's a weird question to ask and it's a big question, but is the food critic who writes for the traditional media outlet, maybe the New York Times or something like that, is that a dying career? Will we not see any Gen Zs fill written critic roles like that? They'll all be video sharing people?
It's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. I mean, I work in food media, so I hope no. But at the same time, I think it's really just showing how if you are a traditional food critic, why leveraging social media could be beneficial to you. That's something that I really noticed is okay, is the traditional food review dead? Maybe. But a lot of these outlets now, like the New York Times, like Infatuation, are kind of taking what we've seen with influencers and their success and they're applying it to their own jobs. So now if you go to the Infatuation, they have a lot of those video reviews that they might not have had 5 or 10 years ago.
They're sort of incorporating the style to traditional media. Is there an irony about having this conversation on AM Talk Radio here with me, Erin?
A little bit.
I see it as well. Well, I appreciate you going over this with me. The article is called Gen Z Skips Yelp for Social Media Restaurant Reviews Recommendations. You can read it in Business Insider, where Erin McDowell is a reporter. Erin, thank you again for joining me. I appreciate the chat.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, we usually think of popularity as something we leave behind with the lockers and cafeteria tables of high school. But it turns out that even into our 20s, 30s, maybe longer, how we're seen in a group, how popular we are, still shapes how you feel about yourself. Think about your own life for a minute. Do you act differently at work, at a party, or when hanging out with your friend group? Just because of how you think others see you? Just because of how popular you might be? Why does this still matter to us into older age? After the break, we'll find out why.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
New York, Berlin, London, Paris, kick so slick and fret so lavish, never roll fake, hard to break like a habit, but if it's at stake, then girl, I gotta have it.
Where David Cooper applies NASA-level precision to decoding mixed signals from both space and significant others. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
How popular you are amongst your friends, your peers, even your classmates isn't something you just need to navigate in high school. Even into your 20s, how you're seen in a group can shape how you act and feel. It remains important beyond high school. Let's talk about how that works with social development researcher at Radboud University in the Netherlands, Dr. Nina Chmielowice-Szymanski. Nina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
It's kind of fun researching popularity. What is the difference between being very popular in a group and being liked in a group?
I guess when you are popular, that is more about your reputation in the entire group. So how everybody else sees you. Whether versus when you are well liked, that is more about how individual people see you. So it's more about the separate relationships.
I'm thinking like the movie Mean Girls. Like those girls, no one really likes them, but they're the most popular ones in school.
Yeah, those are popular girls, yeah.
So walk me through the study. What was the interest in popularity as it comes to folks in high school and then even beyond?
Yeah, so most research on popularity actually has been done on children and adolescents, so up until the latest years of high school. And there hasn't been that much research on young adults, so 18 to 25-year-olds. But the reasons for why that hasn't been studied that much in 20-year-olds, they may actually not be super valid anymore. Because young adults tend to spend more and more time with peers opposed to 30 years ago. So they spend more time with peers, but they haven't been studied that much.
I always kind of told myself, and I tell young people in high school today, like all that nonsense about popularity and hierarchy and wanting to fit in like that, it all goes away once you leave high school, magically. And I guess I'm wrong in this advice that I give people.
I think that's wrong, but I'm also not 100% sure yet, because I think some previous research shows that young adults do tend to think that it goes away after high school. However, some other studies and my research shows that although they might think it goes away, it actually doesn't. So, but then what's really true, I'm not 100% sure yet.
Well, let's talk about your research. You looked at peer groups age 18 to 25. What did you examine and how did you examine it?
So first of all, we took an inventory of where we can find young adults peer groups. So we didn't only look at their school context, but also asked them whether they interact with peers at work or in leisure activities. And we examined within these separate contexts how their social status, so whether they are popular or well-liked, was associated with how they experience this peer group. So with that, we looked at the extent to which they enjoy interacting with their peers and how important they consider their peers, and then how that is related to their popularity.
When you looked at young adults who say being liked matters more, what did they end up saying?
What we also did, it's good that you mentioned that, is we also asked only for young adults at school or at work to what extent they considered it important to be popular. And what we found there is that they all say being liked is more important to me than being popular. But young adults in a work environment said popularity was a little bit more important to them than young adults in a school environment, which is actually contrary to what I would have expected, because the school environment is more similar to high school than a work environment is.
That tension between preferring or thinking that you want to be liked versus being popular, what do you make of that?
Well, being liked actually also matters for your behavior, but what I think the tension is a little bit with that they say that they care less about popularity, but it actually is predictive of how they behave or how they experience it. I think it has to do with that popularity in the Netherlands, where I examined it, has a little bit more of a negative feeling to it than it has, for example, in the US or maybe in Canada as well. So being popular isn't actually necessarily considered as something you would strive for.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe adults don't want to admit that they still care about being popular, but they may actually do so.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like in the U.S. and in North America, people are striving for popularity, and they're more open about it. They don't look at it as this like icky thing that, oh, you're trying too hard.
Yeah.
In what like social contexts is popularity important? Work, sports, friendship groups, or is it all of the above?
Based on my results, I would say it's most important in the work environment and in leisure activities, so sport-related activities or hobby clubs. Some communities, maybe even like sororities. And I think that might be, I'm not sure, because there's more competitiveness in these environments, whereas in a school or a friend group, that might be a bit more friendly. And I think when I'm talking about the school environment here, the peer groups that we examined might actually also be friends. So I think it shows that status matters a bit more in a more competitive, less friendly environment.
Were there any things that stuck out to you about how to become more popular? Like, you've researched this stuff. Are there any tips or any attributes of highly popular individuals that you've noticed?
No, so I haven't myself explicitly examined how to become popular. But from previous research, we know that for adolescents, they say that aggression, for example, is also a way to become popular. You need to know when to behave pro-socially, but also sometimes when to be a little bit mean. And I think that...
Oh, that's not a positive thing. Be a little mean?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is also how I feel about it based on my own school experiences. So what I think is cool is that this doesn't show when you ask emerging adults to describe a popular peer, but when we actually measure their behaviors, we do see that they are still a little bit mean as well.
Is there an intersection between popularity and associated social status with like mental health and overall well-being? Like if I'm a more popular individual at work or even in high school going before the groups that you studied, am I more likely to be like mentally healthy?
So overall, research shows that if you are well-liked, that tends to be associated with good things, so also with positive mental health. But popularity has a little bit of more mixed outcomes. So same as for the behaviors, how they end up later in life tends to be a little bit more mixed as well. So there are some good outcomes, but also some worse. For example, they tend to have higher risk behaviors.
If someone doesn't feel particularly popular or well-liked in their peer group, are there any takeaways from your study you would give them to tell them that it's okay?
I think it could be okay if you do have a few close friends. So being popular or being well-liked by many people isn't necessarily the most important thing. I think it's important that you have some positive relationships, and that could also just be a couple of good friends.
My mom always said if you can count your close friends on one hand, you're doing pretty good. And I guess your advice is right.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Nina, and sharing your research. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Dr. Nina Chmielowice-Szymanski is a social development researcher at Radboud University in the Netherlands. Nina, it was a pleasure having you here. Let me tell you about the Last Show podcast. All you have to do is head to www.lastshow.pizza for more information about it, and there you can find out how to subscribe. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com in your web browser. And on our podcast, you can catch the parts of tonight's show that you missed, or listen to an entire program on a night you couldn't tune in. Also, some bonus content that's podcast only that you won't hear on the radio show, so subscribe. You can also search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. We'll pop up. Here's what we'll cover up next. Imagine your job giving you a smartwatch that tracks your heart rate, your sleep, your stress, maybe even predicts when you're about to burn out. Helpful or a privacy nightmare? Some companies already doing it, and researchers say this could be the future of workplace management or workplace surveillance. Are we headed towards healthier offices or just more sophisticated tracking dressed up as wellness? After the break, we'll talk about a recent study on all this. But the real question, would you wear something like this?
Want to be part of the Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Where intellectual honesty gets witness protection from social prosecution. The Last Show with David Cooper.
If you think your employer monitoring what you're doing by spying on your laptop is bad, you are going to love this topic: wearable devices in the workplace, where your employer requires you to wear something that could track your stress, your sleep, your movement, even your mood. Is it corporate support or corporate surveillance? That is what we're going to dive into here with organizational neuroscience professor at the Surrey Business School in the UK, Sebastiano Massaro. Sebastiano, welcome to the program.
Hello, David. Thank you very much for having me here.
Are we talking like Fitbits? What do we mean when we say wearable monitoring in the workplace? Could I be at a corporation and they make me wear a smartwatch that tracks me?
Well, yeah, potentially, yes. So I won't go into naming names because, we're all very familiar with what wearables are, or we should be at least. But essentially, the idea about wearables is that any device that we can wear on our body, and that is tracking some physiological signals. Now, these are extremely important for a number of reasons. Just think about, health-related reasons. But obviously, because our nervous system works, in a very complex way, they can also provide some information about the way in which we feel, the way in which we behave, the way in which we react to certain decisions. And this is very valuable information in the workplace. And, one of the clearest example is if someone is burning out, that would be a big concern for the person, in the first place, but also for a corporation, for a company that, wouldn't want to have, a non-healthy workforce. Now, what's happening in a way is that because they are ubiquitous and they are extremely cheap compared to maybe a decade ago or 2 decades ago where we didn't even think about that, a lot of companies and big corporations are also thinking about using them as part of their, say, well-being packages or as incentive to employees. And, the related aspect of having wearables is that wearables, they give data, right? And so, if I have a wearable that can capture data, I can actually use data. Now, to do what? That's the question. So,
and it doesn't have to all be bad. You can imagine someone operating heavy machinery, like a crane operator. If they're having some, physical problems, you would want to tell them so that they don't have an accident. There could be safety issues that these wearables pick up on. So there are some use cases that might be ethical, but then firing someone because they didn't work hard enough or they spent too much time in the bathroom, that would be a negative use. And I think it's important to make sure that employees aren't doing that negative one.
No, totally. I mean, it would be, in my view, at least unethical, regardless of the wearables, doing something like that. But, we live in a very complex world, so to say. And now, as regards to the wearables, as you're rightly pointing out, because we can monitor signals that are even beyond the awareness of individual, we are able, for instance, to see how people are building up stress. We are also able to monitor certain specific conditions. If we look in the healthcare domain, we can actually see if someone is rested or not, thanks to wearables that are able to monitor the sleep pattern of individuals. Or we can actually leverage and harness this information, for instance, to see what is the best time of the day in which someone can be more or less productive. But obviously, there is the other side of the coin, which is what do we make out of this information when it's put in in a wrong mindset, in the idea of controlling, in the idea of using the physiological data as metrics for performance on top of many other metrics that probably are already used in small and large companies. And that's where the main issue, and that's the issue we're tackling in our work, lays, because these devices are providing information that are essentially inferences from our physiological signal. Now, the way in which these signals are inferred, the way in which they are processed, the way in which they actually deliver an output, that depends a lot on the sensor, on the actual device that you're using, and on the interpretation of the device. So I'll give you a very simple example that can maybe also listener can relate to. You can take any smartwatch, whichever brand, and I'm pretty sure that from the very cheap one to the most expensive one, you will have some function where it says like you are stressed, or your heart rate proxy is whatever 100. Now, without awareness of how this number or this smiley facing, picture icon, or whatever the output of the device is, without awareness of the way in which the data are collected, processed, and analyzed within the device itself, and this is very often something which is proprietary information of the producer, of the manufacturer, then we have very little information of what this actual output is telling us. So let's imagine a sort of dystopian future or situation where there is a company or an employer that is giving employees this workplace and wants to measure maybe also for some good reason, good ideas in mind, how stressed these employees are, and is taking this whatever brand is taking these sensors and then is looking at a value from 0 to 100, and then sees that somehow all the workforce is very high on stress. Then obviously the employer will be very concerned, the employees will be very concerned, but it's actually a reliable information. So the issue that we're having now is that and bear the analogy here is somehow what's happening with the AI in a way. We are having tools that are extremely powerful, they are extremely heavy on data, they provide evidence. But if it's put in the wrong framework, if the methodology is not accurate, if there isn't a clear understanding of what this data mean, then the issue is that we can make some inferences and essentially draw conclusions that are completely opposite or even counterproductive to what the data are telling us.
Interesting. Let's talk that framework. Suppose I'm trying to think of a good job where I might want the physiological responses of the employee to be monitored. Maybe like a pilot. It's important that a pilot is well rested and doesn't show up to fly a plane still drunk from partying the night before. There's certain employees where I would feel more okay monitoring them, but we'd have to know the company, the airline, is doing it in an ethical way. What advice would you have to a company that's going to deploy these sensors, whether you like it or not?
Well, the first point would be like, don't do it just for the sake of doing it, and as some scientist on board, as someone that can actually walk you through what these devices are doing, make sure that everything is standardized, make sure also that the workforce, whether it's the captain in an airplane or a road worker, working at night, is very, very important that they are aware of what is being done. They are aware and they consent to the use of the data, and they understand what the potential of using this data is, which first of all is a potential for a more personalized approach, a more humanized approach to the workforce, and that's what it's really the power of this data and of these devices. But if it's done without any scientific flavor, just for the sake of doing it, or misinterpretation, which might be due just to take face value what is provided by a device, then there are more risks than benefits. So the advice is like, it's possible. We are already in a world in which this is happening for certain corporations, for certain company, but the way in which this is done is what is most fundamental and most relevant in order to have, to leverage essentially the power of this device and the data.
Is there anything else that worries you looking ahead to where this technology could go? Or is there anything that gives you optimism about this kind of technology in the workplace?
I am, I'm an optimist as a person in general, so I like to look at the bright side of things, and I think that these devices are enabling a number of opportunities, not just for the workforce, but for mankind in general, that a few years back we could just dream of. So we have a huge potential in the technology, and we have the opportunity to really make it work. So let's look at this. Let's look at the bright side, but let's do it in an ethical way, in a way which is data informed and is data driven.
Sebastiano, thank you for joining me. Thanks for talking to me about this.
Thank you, David.
Sebastiano Massaro is an organizational neuroscience professor at the Surrey Business School in the UK. When a company screws up, which apology works better from a CEO? I'm sorry or we're sorry? It might seem like it doesn't make a difference, but the answer changes everything, even stock prices. We'll tell you what it is after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Hey friends, it's Karamo, talk show host, life coach, and your next best friend. You just don't know it yet. I'm hosting a new podcast called Started on WhatsApp, Brotherhoods. We're going around the world to explore male friendships and all the wins, challenges, and bonds that are made in WhatsApp group chats. And that's exactly where you can listen to it. Right in the app. It's streaming on the official WhatsApp channel. Just open the app and go to the Updates tab to start listening. While you're at it, message your best friend and make sure they listen too. I'll see you there.
The only talk show with an introduction that mentions its own introduction. And that's happening right now in this introduction. The last show with David Cooper.
Begging for a mention. Yeah, you just want attention.
When companies mess up, the CEO can step up and say sorry, to apologize. But the exact wording of those CEO apologies, like lasering in on the individual words, this wording can shift the public's trust, the company's reputation, even stock prices. I'm here with Dr. Prachi Gala, a marketing professor at Kennesaw State University who studied this. Prachi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David, for having me.
So this core question that your research explores, how CEO apologies work and how people perceive them based on the wording. What made you interested in this?
So it's great to be here, firstly. So, we all say sorry, but CEOs do it with billions on the line, with billions of dollars on the line. And what we discovered is that the way they apologize really matters. So sometimes it's the story started as small as when I and my husband were fighting, and sometimes he takes onus, sometimes I take onus, and sometimes we say we messed up. I messed up or we messed up. So that's where it struck me that we messed up was so much better when we talked, that we both diverted the blame to each other, distributed it. It was okay, how do CEOs do it? So that was a nice beginning.
And not all sorries are created equally. There's the I'm sorry you feel that way apology, which is not an apology at all. And then there's the I accept responsibility for my behavior and the impact. Not all apologies are created equal. And I think in the corporate context, this wording can really matter so much. So what are some of these forms of apologies? What are some of these wording choices that CEOs make where they get it right and they get it wrong?
So I will talk about what our research found specifically.
Sure.
We compared, very simple, we compared two words, whether they take onus and say, I apologize about product recalls. It can be about some deaths happening or it can be about scandals, whether they say, I apologize, or whether they want to say, we apologize. Very simple. We compared these two. And what we found was when the CEO says, I apologize, and takes onus and takes all the blame on themselves, the stock market, the investors look at the integrity part of it, and the stock market actually turned positive the next day. So when the CEO said, I apologize after some mishap, the stock market had a positive return for that company. And the moment they said, we apologize, the investors understood it as they are distributing the blame and not wanting to take the onus, and the stock market reacted negatively.
It's really that simple. The I versus we, the stock market has a really noticeable effect on the share price.
It has a very noticeable effect. Of course, there are many variables in the play, but we controlled for all the variables, a lot of changes that happen, a lot of dynamics that happen. We controlled for all of this, and despite that, and this is not a 1 or 2 year data, this is a 20 plus year data. We began collecting data of all CEO apologies, and I wouldn't say CEO, in spokesperson apologies. It can be anyone who is representing the CEO, or it can be anyone who's representing the company. Majority of the times, it is the CEO CEO, but whoever the spokesperson of that company is. We started collecting data in 1996 and we went all the way until 2023, and we had a detailed list of all the CEO apologies of Fortune 500. So we downloaded all the apologies, and after that, we compared the stock market return one day after they apologized using IRB.
Let's look at some of these examples. Tylenol, which I think is a really classic one. Can you walk me through what happened with Tylenol and why it's considered like a gold standard of apology? What happened and the response?
So when Johnson & Johnson CEO said, "I apologize," people felt that he owned the crisis. The brand bounced back and the case became that golden standard of crisis management just because he took the blame to himself.
What was the crisis with Tylenol back then? Just recap it for me.
So in 1982, 7 people in Chicago area died after taking that extra strength Tylenol capsule that had been laced with cyanide. So it was a shocking act and it triggered nationwide panic.
So basically someone was able to poison the bottle and they weren't sealed effectively.
Yes. And he said that we regret this incident. He didn't say that we regret this incident. He said, "I apologize to the American people." That is how it went.
Got it. And then if we look at this Samsung example where the company apologized and just said, "We are sorry," what does that tell us about the difference in the language?
So when Samsung happened, this was in 2016 in the battery crisis. And they announced this smartphone, but soon after the release, reports emerged that the phone were overheating and catching fire everywhere. So there were...
I remember.
Yeah, cars on fire and stuff. So Samsung issued a global recall and the replacements also caught fire. So that was another issue. So when Samsung had this issue, the official statement they came up with was, "We are truly sorry for the inconvenience and this has caused him. We are working hard to regain the stress." So they used "we" repeatedly. The tone was very collective, formal, cautious, but the CEO did not publicly say, "I am sorry." They say, "We are sorry."
And the stock price tanked.
And the stock price tanked. It dropped 8% in a few days.
Let's talk about the mechanism here, because I'd like to think it's not just the words, but it's the underlying corporate culture that leads to the words. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a company that produces an apology that uses I language that feels like they're really taking responsibility versus a corporate culture that doesn't. Is there anything about that, about this mechanism, about why we accept these apologies more? Or do you really just think it's the language choice and nothing more?
It is about this way the spokesperson shows their integrity. So there has been a lot of research on how the CEO's personality triggers down the corporate culture. So there is an impact on the culture. So it's a very subtle signal on how the CEO really is. Is he or she a narcissist? Which the research has shown a lot of CEOs are very high on that rating of narcissism. So they are overconfident. So when it comes to owning the mistakes, they usually don't. They want to pass on the blame or have the team be accountable for that. So when the CEO takes the onus and shows that they are high integrity and that, yes, I messed up, I am the person who actually should be blamed, the investors see that humility, see that integrity in the CEO and increase that confidence in that company.
I know not everyone listening is a CEO. I'd hazard to say almost no one listening is a CEO. But is there something they can learn from your study? You mentioned at the beginning of the interview your interest in apologies was based on your relationship with your husband and your fights. Is there something I can learn? Is there something a listener can learn about how to apologize effectively from your research?
Totally. So investors are in the end all people. We are all humans, we are all people, and we invest in each other. We invest our time, our effort, our trust in each other. So saying sorry is very important in any relationship. And what is more important is what pronoun you use that matters, which tells them who is really in charge. And that even if, and especially for the relationships that are very special to you, you don't get small by just accepting that apology yourself, just using I and saving that relationship rather than getting your ego bigger and saying we and distributing the blame. Taking onus just increases your humility and integrity.
So the worst possible apology, if we're saying that I'm sorry you feel that way is bad, to say we're sorry you feel that way would be even worse.
Even worse. Yes. Yes.
Prachi, I appreciate you coming on the show and having this discussion about CEO apologies with me. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.
Dr. Prachi Gala is a marketing professor at Kennesaw State University. Did you know The Last Show is available as a podcast? If you head to www.lastshow.pizza, that's lastshow.pizza in your web browser, not .com, you can find out details, including how to subscribe. Catch full episodes that you missed, interviews you loved, or some bonus content that you won't hear on the radio program. Podcast-only content. So go ahead and subscribe. You can always search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app as well. Up next, The Modern Office, a boring dystopia. But with a few hot takes, you can get ahead. There is a right way to ask for a raise, and there is a reason the culture in your office feels like high school. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The Last Show with David Cooper, where we apply quantum mechanical psychoanalytical astrotherapy to your problems.
She's notorious for leaking HR secrets. She might tell you to shut the something up in a way that won't get you fired. And she says that you, in the workplace, ought to operate with the confidence of a mediocre man. She hosts Clock In with Emily. It's a podcast. Her name is Emily Durham. She goes by Emily the Recruiter. And we're here to talk, HR issues and how to get ahead at work. Emily, I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I anticipate this is going to be the segment that your boss hopes you aren't listening to. So if you have stumbled upon this, I think we're going to have a good time.
Are there secrets that people can learn from you, but, your hot takes to get ahead at the workplace, things that people don't say, but they ought to do?
100%. How much time do we have? I think the biggest thing is people don't realize that visibility matters so much more than the quality of your work. You can spend your whole life trying to be the smartest, most intelligent person in every single room, but then look to your right and realize that person with the big, loud personality is often the one getting promoted. So putting effort into networking intentionally, asking for favors, and being what I like to call the office celebrity. So remembering the details about people's personal lives. Not in a creepy way, but in a way where you follow up, you small talk, you make people feel seen. I guarantee 6 months of that is getting you further ahead than that MBA you're thinking of going back to school to get.
I want to talk about this visibility thing because being sociable in the workplace is so important. I've been that employee at a tech company hoping for the promotion, but I've also been that manager in the room when people are deciding who gets promoted. And I guess occasionally it's like, oh, they aced this one project, but they're this nimble, mousy person. But the people who get talked about are the big personalities. I feel like there's this Venn diagram of competence, but then likability and visibility. And if you're right there in the middle, you don't need to be the best employee. You just got to be adequate. And if everyone likes you, you're going to get talked about when it comes time for promotion. Is that what you're saying?
100%. So the baseline is you have to be good at your job, right? If you're not good at your job, you being likable is not really going to matter because no one likes working with someone who's bad at what they do. But the reality is you don't need to boil the ocean. You don't need to be the person who does the most, who's always got your hands in 1,000 pots. Be a little bit more strategic. Be really good at your job, and the extra stuff that you take on, make sure that's the stuff the executives see. Maybe that's the employee resource group that you're working with. It's all of these things that are highly visible that you then get to dangle in front of your boss because it makes your boss look good and your boss look engaged. And if you're hearing this thinking, well, I'm an introvert, I don't want to be the loudest in the room, it's not about being the loudest, it's about being seen. So be strategic with where you put your time. That's what gets you ahead.
Those extra little things you do that you volunteer for at work that aren't that much effort but are super high visibility, go for those. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the one. I call it the 10% rule. You should spend 10% of every work week working on stuff that's not your job, but damn, does it look good on your profile. And I love volunteering internally, again, in those employee resource groups. They're great for you to be connected to mentors, but it's huge on visibility.
I made a big push in my old tech job to be on hiring panels, to be the person who decides to hire people. it was kind of boring. It was kind of extra work. You had to do these interviews. But then when you're on the panel discussing with all these senior people who they should hire and they're listening to your opinion, it wasn't a huge amount of effort, but I feel like it was something that got me promoted early on.
It's just one more unconventional way for you to connect with someone maybe who wouldn't know how you work otherwise. But now they're like, you know what? David's got an interesting perspective. He's kind of got a point on that. And suddenly you're someone they want to work with again. You're not just a number kind of on a piece of paper.
Let's have some fun here. I feel like that's a good one. Be highly visible. But I recently saw a video of yours where you said that The Office is 99% like high school. We're talking cliques, gossip, mean girl situation, exclusion, bullying. It's like the cafeteria lunchroom all over again. Do you believe that's the case in most offices?
I don't know if it's for most, but for many. I think the reality is anytime you spend 40 hours or more a week with the same group of people, there's a false sense of comfortability and security. People are a bit more comfortable to say things that are a bit out of pocket, to offer more critique, to question your opinions, question why you were 5 minutes late to that meeting. There just tends to be this uncomfortable sense of community that hasn't been earned, which can often turn up in things like office mean girls trying to assert dominance. And it's really all coming down to one issue. We're all struggling to be seen at work, which is why if you're one of the smart ones who finds ways to be visible that doesn't put you in competition with others, your life's going to get a whole lot easier. But yeah, this stuff often feels like high school.
Office gossip, like I hear it happen. I've been a part of it in my old career. It's like, it can get like really ugly and really unnecessary, but I feel like you maybe can use it to your advantage.
You can. But only if we completely don't do it and do what I'm about to say instead. So when it comes to office gossip, if someone's coming to you with the juice and the squeeze about someone, you're not engaging. I don't care if that's your work bestie. I have worked in HR. I have seen what that does to your career. You don't want that getting out. Someone comes to you with a tidbit of information. You play dumb. Oh, I didn't know that. Or, oh, interesting. I don't really notice those things. You pretend you don't pay attention. You diffuse it. If you want to gossip and build that sense of connection with people without it leaning negative and putting you in a position of risk, focus on positive gossip. Did you see Susan and her boyfriend got a dog? It's so cute, this little cockapoo. Bring up things that are positive, that still scratch the itch of community, but don't make you look like a jerk.
Interesting. So engage only positively, do not engage when it's negative, but it can be so fun, negative gossip. It can bond you with your coworkers.
It can. I would ask you if the only way you can bond with people is over negativity. Is that a bond worth having, especially when it puts you at risk?
And is that the employee that companies want? No.
Exactly. No. And you know what's more fun to me? Picking up my crisp check every other Friday and going to the bank without being scared of being fired. So if you like the gossip more than you like being paid, baby, I do not know what to tell you.
All right. Things you can do to get ahead at work. You mentioned, of course, volunteering for projects that are highly visible. What about being the first to stab at something? What does that mean?
Okay, so this is something I often joke about online where I say you should be the first to stab. It is like the tiniest little hack to help you get recognized at work. But when you're in a meeting and a topic comes up, maybe a project you have to do, an action item that comes up, you'll notice there's usually a little bit of silence. And
when they say anybody volunteer for this thing and then everyone looks at each other, oh God, I hope someone else does it.
The trick is before they even have to say, does anyone want to volunteer? Say, oh, I can take a stab at that. And then if it's, not in your wheelhouse, someone's going to hop in and offer to take it off your plate. And if not, sure, you've taken on a little bit of extra work, but it puts you in a position of proactivity, helps you build that credibility. And once again, it's visibility. Everyone in that meeting now knows you're on top of your A game.
But what if you're lazy? Come on. I mean, part of the reason I'm not in tech anymore is I knew there'd be a day when my boss came in and said, David, you're too lazy. We're letting you go. Like, what if the idea of doing extra stuff at work is just so awful for you? What do you tell when people say that?
Yeah, I mean, are you lazy or are you looking for ways to be more efficient? I think in today's world where we're, do you know what I mean?
No, I love it. That's you just reframed it perfectly.
There it is. Like, you are not lazy. You just know there's better ways you could use your time. Why not take the stuff you don't like off your desk and into AI platforms and tools if it's allowed in your workspace, which for many of us it is. Have your emails, all of that icky stuff automated for you, and then focus on the high visibility work. Like, that's where AI needs to be coming in. You're not lazy. You just are looking to streamline, okay?
What about I'm not lazy, I'm just not motivated? That was more of a high school problem, I think, for me.
You know what? You'd be surprised.
Getting the energy to be nice to your coworkers when you can't stand them. Where does that come from?
A higher power that I have little to no control over. The idea isn't that you are nice to these people because you want to be their friends. Stop trying to be kind to people in an effort to be friends and reposition your work connections as allies. And when you start looking at it through a more strategic lens, you'll realize you maybe have one or two work friends. The rest are all just allies, people you need in your corner. And the second you remove that emotion, that expectation they're going to meet you with that same kindness tends to drop away. But we don't need to fake nice. Be perfectly cordial, be perfectly easy to work with. That's your ally, not your friend.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction because I think a lot of people think their work friends are their friends. They go to another company, they never hear from them again. The kind of people that you'll stay in touch with, those are your only friends, the rest allies. Emily, I'm getting such a kick out of talking to you. You can find Emily on Clock In with Emily, a podcast. She also goes by Emily the Recruiter. Her name is Emily Durham. How many times can I say the word Emily? That I don't know. But when we come back, the right way to ask for a raise. Emily, I'm looking forward to that chat with you in a moment. I said your name too many times. This was a terrible...
I love it.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough. All right, we'll be back with more in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
The market sucks right now. The idea of asking your boss or your company for a raise might be anxiety-inducing, but there is a right way to do it, and that's what we'll discuss here with Emily Durham, who goes by Emily the Recruiter. Check out her podcast, Clock In with Emily. Emily, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, I've talked to friends who are still at big companies, and the idea of asking for a raise is so scary to them when they're worried they could be laid off at any minute. But the fact is, people are still getting raises out there, aren't they?
They are. So the first thing you need to realize is the cost of living continues to rise. That continues to go up. So if your salary hasn't been increased every year or at least every year and a half, chances are you're underpaid, regardless of what the hiring market looks like. The truth of the situation is, the market is bad. We have less bargaining room. It's not as believable to say, well, if you don't give me this number, I have 4 other job offers in my back pocket. That's not the world we live in. It also doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be compensated for the work that you do. It doesn't mean we aren't asking for a raise. It just means our tact needs to be a little bit more strategic with what we're actually doing to get that raise.
So what should we be doing? I have ideas about this because I used to manage employees. I used to try to get raises for myself. I'm certain your ideas are better, but let's hear what yours are.
We'll see. So first things first, if you are not doing well at your job and you don't have feedback from your boss that you are, if not exceeding your expectations on performance, it's not a good time to ask for a raise. Asking for a raise is not going to be the reason you get laid off or fired, but if you're not doing well and you ask for a raise, it's showing you're out of touch with reality, my friend. So performance needs to be on track. Once you are sure that your performance is where it needs to be, book an in-person meeting or phone meeting with your boss for about 15 minutes. In the conversation, I don't want you saying the cost of living has gone up, life is expensive. They see the quality of your work because you work with them every day, because you communicate what value you add in your job regularly. Instead, in this conversation, you say, I've really enjoyed working with this team. I love how much my role has expanded. I've really enjoyed working with Susie and Bob. I wanted to know if there's an opportunity for us to talk about my salary or compensation as we approach year end. Now, the trick is, ideally, you want to do this a few months before your company does their annual performance review. But if not, and it's off cycle, that's okay. You just ditch the last part of the sentence. And the biggest tip of all, stop talking. The most powerful negotiation tool in the world is silence. Make your ask sit there quietly. If your boss is going to be able to get you the raise, they will tell you. If they need time, they will tell you. If it's a no, they will tell you. But you begging isn't helping your case. It's about being an effective communicator.
Here's my take, and I love what you just said. The goal, let's say it's getting me $5,000 more a year. There's two ways to go about the same goal. Well, there's probably many ways, but two that I see that are common. Me versus you, where me versus my manager, you need to get me this raise, or if you don't, you're in trouble, like a very adversarial approach. And then the other negotiating tactic is me and you together as a team getting towards a goal. So you got to figure out some frame where your manager wants to work with you. Say things like, hey, like, let's get a plan going where we can like work on this together and you give me feedback over these next 3 months or whatever, and we can work towards this common goal. Oh, by the way, the common goal is getting me a raise. If there's a way you can figure it out so that it seems like you're working on this together versus me versus you, I think that's a good way to do it. What say you to that approach?
100%. And I think that's where the power of asking it as a question, not a demand, comes in, because your boss might respond and say, listen, you're doing well, but not well enough for me to ask for a raise in this market. Then you say, okay, how can we get there? Can we meet weekly? Can we work on X, Y, and Z together? If your boss says, well, I'm going to have to put together a pitch, offer to support on that. Asking it as a question makes it a collaborative effort and not a demand. In this market, demands are not the way to go. That would have worked 4 years ago, but sure as heck not today.
Well, let's talk about how one dramatic thing has changed today. How AI has completely slopified the cold online application process, from the point where candidates are just AI-ifying their cover letters, their resumes, and applying to so many jobs. And then companies are using AI to consume those resumes, instantly rejecting hundreds. Basically, the landscape of just finding a job, maybe on LinkedIn, clicking apply, uploading your PDF resume or whatever, that whole process is now like awful and has such low margins, has such low pass rates, has such low getting past even like to a phone screen, let alone to an actual interview. So what should I do in that landscape today?
Give yourself permission to have a quick cry because it sucks. But once we move past the emotion of this, it's really important to understand the broader context of why this is happening so we know what to do about it. AI is obviously a massive part of this. One thing I will say is companies aren't entirely adopting AI as part of their application screening just yet. And that's largely because there's been some pretty meaningful class action lawsuits that suggest, and obviously I believe will be true, that AI is highly discriminatory with how
Shocker.
they review. Yeah, surprising news. So I would say that is what I'm less concerned about. I think the bigger issue here is there are so many job applicants and not enough jobs available. So to your point, candidates are leveraging AI to mass apply, to update their resumes more often. Recruiters are using it to mass schedule, maybe in some cases to help them screen through resumes in a way that makes things really messy and impersonal. The real issue today isn't having the perfect resume optimized by AI, and it's not mastering the applicant tracking system. It's getting your resume opened. And in a world that has leaned so far on the AI side of things, the only way to get that is through personal connection, whether that is networking with the company and reaching out to flag your application after you have applied, asking for referrals, even going to sneaky little websites and buying a referral. I know that's unethical, but I don't care about ethics. I care about you getting paid.
I didn't even know about those.
Yeah.
If I worked for some big company, I could sell referrals?
It's super sketchy, but yeah,
Wow.
you totally can. Yeah.
Wild.
Listen, sketchy in the context of capitalism, baby, you got to eat. I'm not here to judge, but really focus your energy on what previously would have been mass applications and customizing each of your resumes to now high volume intentional networking and asking for your resume to be opened after you have applied.
Go on LinkedIn, figure out who the hiring manager probably is, reach out directly to make a personal connection. Don't just apply on a portal. Even if you don't know people, like don't have an established career you can network with, you can find these people and meet them and not just apply cold through a portal. It's hard, but it's doable.
It's really hard. And you also have to manage your expectations. For every 20 messages you send, you'll be lucky to receive one response. I'm not saying these odds are good. I'm not pretending that this is an easy process. It's total BS. I hate that this is the state of the market, but this is the state of the market. And I would rather you spend your time networking because it's going to yield better results.
I'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk about one of your hot HR takes.
Which one?
This one maybe mostly to women, but maybe also to men. Operate in the workplace with the confidence of a mediocre man. I love it, but please, you got to say more about it.
Yes. So for every man listening who's like, let me block this gal on Instagram, hold up. The reason that I say this is because when we look at statistics and data around who imposter syndrome, meaning that nagging feeling in the back of your head that you're not good enough, that often holds us back in our career careers and our finances disproportionately impacts women, particularly women of color. And data shows when we ask people how they feel at work, women tend to be more anxious about their workplace performance. And that's not to say that men don't experience this in other ways, but a lot of the data does point to that. So when I speak to a lot of my clients, especially my women clients, they're constantly in their heads wondering, oh my gosh, am I getting fired? Am I horrible at what I do? And I always tell them, people who should be worried about being fired based on their performance are never worried about being fired based on their performance. If you are already that self-reflective and that anxious and that in your head, you are already self-aware enough to know if something truly was going down with your career, if it was in your control. So showing up, communicating confidently, not apologizing for taking up space, which are things that historically women tend to do a little bit more than men, is kind of my nod with that. But I honestly think it's advice everyone can kind of lean into. Take up space, ask for what you want, be direct, and be thoughtful about the spaces you're doing that in, because we also know not every work environment makes that safe for everyone who's doing that.
Well, you can hear Emily Durham or Emily the Recruiter on the podcast Clock In with Emily. Emily, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on the show. That's a wrap on the night. We'll be back tomorrow night. I know I've said it before, but check out the Last Show podcast. Search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app like Spotify or Apple. Will pop up and subscribe. I am David Cooper, and this was never the first show.